Hello everyone, Burb here. I will admit I'm a bit rushed on this one. I have a 9 to 5 I have to go to here in about 30 minutes, but I would like to get this recorded before I leave, so we're going to be doing this in one singular take. And I've been a bit busy on the Takezo and the Narita Taishin videos, and this one kind of got pushed back a little bit. But for those in Teio Wit and Lucas, I wanted to make sure I got their favorite support card out on review before it actually got released. So this is Tokai Teio Wit. Again, this is just a pretty basic card, so I wasn't originally planning on doing it, but it has a couple bits of interesting discussion on why you've been hearing that a lot of high spenders are actually pulling this card, because it's something that hopefully over the course of time that you will get your account level up to, even if you are a free to play and you're just pulling on like one or two support cards over the course of an entire scenario. Eventually you will reach the point of saturation that these high spenders are actually at currently. So that will be at the very end. Otherwise, we will do our standard, albeit a bit abridged version of the standard card review to give you the information to determine whether or not you believe it is good or not. And I will tell you my personal suggestion at the end. All right, let's begin and talk about Tokai Teio Wit, or Hachimi Wit. For the limit break compare, this is very simple. It's meant to be an MLB card, and the reasoning is that on 1 LB, we have a speed bonus increase. Like we said before in previous videos, speed bonus, wit bonus, stat bonus is one of the most powerful things in the game, and if a card usually has it, normally it is required for the particular breakpoints. Not to say that it's bad at 1 LB, we'll talk about that in a bit. It's just that most of its value is not going to be through friendship training or through TEF or through mood effect, stuff like that, stuff that are global passives. It's really just really determined by those bonuses. This is a lot like Mr. CB, where most of its power is derived from the fact that it has very high whip bonus and speed bonus. And in fact, it's 1 speed bonus and 2 whip bonus in this case if you get it MLB. But the problem is that at 1 LB, you get your speed bonus, and at 3 LB and 4 LB, you get a whip bonus each. And that stacks up a lot because that gets multiplied by every single other modifier in the game, especially if you have additional wit cards on the training itself. For the unique effect, this is where a lot of the value comes in. You notice there is training effectiveness 20% over the course of the entire card. You don't normally get all of that. Basically, it's based off of the total bonds in your deck at the current moment when you press that training tab. So whatever bonds you have on the 6 cards in your deck, up to 100, of course. Every single line that you see is a 20 breakpoint, or not a breakpoint, but 20 bond visually shown. It does keep track and round down for bonds, so every single tap's going to be 7 bond, but every 30 bond is equal to 1% TEF, and I would say you probably sit around 15% training effectiveness over the course of a run. Perhaps in the early junior year, it's closer to 5% to 10% in the year 2 to 15 to 20% in the year 3. Mostly you are not maxing absolutely every single card at this moment in terms of bond. Perhaps in Trackblazer when you had the carrots, but now I think it's a little bit more difficult. But every single time you press the training, you're getting basically 1/4 of a training effectiveness point on any bond that you do, not just Teio herself. Otherwise, you need about 4.28 bonds total. They'll give you 1 permanent training effectiveness on her. And in the Grand Life scenario, when we're really focusing on friendship training, this is very powerful because it's basically, coinciding and synergizing with the scenario mechanic, and not Narita Taishin this time. For LB compare, like I said before, MLB, and this is the reason why. 1 LB, you do get the +2 speed, but the thing is that wit bonus is +2 wit every single time you do because of the amplification. And when you start getting into double and triple trainings, we're talking multiple wit over the course of a run. It's probably close to 50 to 100 per wit bonus, so it is a significant amount of stats that you are losing if you're not getting this MLB. And that's why I'm saying that you probably want to make sure you have enough carrots if you are pulling for this for 2 sparks in order to do it, because getting this at a lower LB without crystals is going to be a bit tough. For training compare, when compared to the other wit cards that are in the game right now, it is usually, if you max out the training effectiveness, usually slightly better or on par. Now, Fine Motion says it has additional SP bonus. Realistically, it's just the breakpoint is like literally right there. This is like 5.95 and this is like 6.02 for SP bonus due to the increased mood effect that is multiplicative. I think I put it later, but you'll see there it's just a very, very, very small difference in SP. Neither of these cards have SP bonus. It's just that. Otherwise, you basically are on par with Fine Motion, perhaps a little bit better because of the bonuses synergizing better in double and triple trainings, because you're going to utilize the training effectiveness and friendship bonus of the other cards. Mr. CB, even at lower LB, is just slightly behind. Mostly this is CB's strength is the fact she has skill point bonus, which really, really, really boosts your skill points over the course of time. Nice Nature is just slightly behind now, but does have a bit of race bonus for the events that kind of brings it close. And we don't talk about Tannhauser, but you can see why, man. That I don't. Sure, it can heal 10. For off trainings, Fine Motion and Tokai Teio, in general, you basically have the same off trainings. And the reason why that is, and the reason why I was talking about the SP bonus before, is because basically if you do the math on the stats that it gives. So 20% TEF at maximum is 1.44 if you consider training effectiveness times a great mood. Now, the thing is that Fine Motion has mood effect, and mood effect is technically multiplicative with training effectiveness. So despite having 15% training effectiveness and 30% MEF, that 30% MEF is worth slightly more than the additional 5% TEF. So it's not a direct 5-to-1 ratio. It's closer to about 6-to-1 for it, because basically you are doing 1 plus 0.2 times 0.3. So the great mood gives you 20% bonus. That mood effect amplifies that by 0.03. So you get a bonus 0.06 basically for it. And if you do that math, 1.15 times what is essentially 1.26, that equals 1.45. And that actually is the breakpoint on a level 5 Unity training. When you get into Grand Live and they buff the speed training just the tiniest of bits, I think you're going to find that it's fine. Like you have other bonuses, like one participant bonus will get you above that level. This is again though at max value. So most likely you will be in the 10 to 15% training effectiveness. So you just fall slightly behind Fine Motion in terms of stat output. But that's perfectly fine because you can't run multiple Fine Motions. It is significantly better than SR. Tokai Teio MLB is, of course, going to be really far ahead of all the SRs in the pool, even through Fuku itself. And 1LB is pretty close to the output of an SR card. I wouldn't really say that it's an upgrade too much. You do get a little bit more speed, but like even stuff like, I guess, like Fuku is, 1LB. I guess it has more wits. This is not the right numbers. I'm sorry. I think it's supposed to be +9. It's because this is the 20%, the full 20% TEF. So when you're back at 1LB, it is the whip bonus is going to go down to like 20 when you're at like closer to 10%, because it's much more relying on that training effectiveness. Specialty priority is standard for a WIT SSR at 35. You'll get there about 1 out of every 4 times. The initial friendship is also standard at 20, along with Fine Motion. You need 9 trainings to get the bond up to friendship level, and you need 12 trainings to get her maxed out. Anything above 1LB will not require an additional training in this respect. So 1LB is kind of like the minimum breakpoint for this, but realistically, you still want this MLB. She's just a generally good WIT card, and this is why normally I wouldn't talk about this, but like she's perfectly fine, and for the purposes that she fills a particular niche, which we will just talk about here. Sure, skills are really what are kind of moving her up. Now, her skills aren't incredible, they're just good. That's kind of the purpose of this card, is it's just a generally good WIT card. Her events, 1 is just stats, 2 gives you basically just like CB, gives you a chance of a recovery and some skill points in this case, versus just getting the skill points. It is, I believe, an Agima Sen for WIT. I could be wrong on that. And then otherwise, you can just choose additional stats instead, and then you get Professor of Curvature, and this is where this card really fills its own niche. Its random events can give PCS as well, Pace Chaser Straights. So you have generally good hints with Nimble Navigator, with Pace Chaser Corners, I believe, and now it puts it with Pace Chaser Straights here, Corner Adept, of course, and then the rest of them are just kind of okay. So everything's okay with this card. It's a good WIT card that is basically somewhere in the 10 to 15% TEF range, is going to be somewhere in that 90 to 95% of a Fine Motion that I keep talking about as a general good bearing for an SSR WIT card. That's why, like, CB is up there because it's basically like 97% to 95% of a wit card. This kind of falls into that range of 90 to 95 to 90 to 98% of a fine motion. Realistically, when you're talking about over the course of a run, your bond's increasing over time. So high spenders are picking this card up, and the reason is because of Professor of Curvature. It is a generally good card that is a wit card that has pro curve, which is unique in the space because now the only time you can really get this is through Kidison Black at the moment. And generally speaking, a couple things with that. First of all, this is really the first wit card that has a generally good skill. Besides one, I suppose, but like think of it this way. Nice Nature has on your left, which is really for lates. You have Symboli Sirius, which is for backliners on mediums only. You have CB, which at the end of the day, you have an end closer skill, and you have Fine Motion, who gives Prepared to Pass for the Pace Chasers. The reason why I'm talking about it like this is you have to think about why the high spenders would be pulling this one. They have enough SSR cards to fill up a deck whatever they want, so what is the advantage that you do? You go and focus on cards that give you good skills, and those good skills are for specific roles instead. First of all, notably, frontrunners are missing from this pool, but also just the utility of having a card where you basically go and you have a generally good skill. This is the same reason why Nakama Festa is being used in much of high roll decks, because Nothing Ventured is pretty much the same way, despite its low specialty priority or no lack of it thereof. It's just a generally good wit card that has a good gold skill and a bunch of good hints as well. Although this one is really, really finicky, whereas Tokai Teio at least gives some level of stability over the course of the run. Professor of Curvature is just a generally good skill, and when you have a generally good skill, you can use this in pretty much any deck as an option. And when would you want to use it? It's when you don't want to use Kidison Black. Most likely in Grand Live, it's when you're using 2 speed cards, because a lot of times you are filled out with speed cards because they are giving you things that you really want. Think of it like this. Those high spenders, they not only have access to a ton of wit cards to fill up their slots, they have access to too many speed cards because speed cards have a lot of good stuff. Not only just Fuku for just giving stats, but think of it this way. The next Champions meeting after this one is a Mile CM. If you're playing Pace Chaser or Frontrunner, wouldn't you love to have Mile Maven? Well, you have Taiki Shuttle that gives it to you, but that's a speed card. And now all of a sudden, especially for like a front player, you really want to have Marazensky for your top runner, and you really want to have Agnes Tachyon because it's the best weight card that gives the most amount of SP and has Scenario Link as well. Think of it this way too. If you're a Pace Chaser, you have Agnes Tachyon doing that and that as well. How are you going to be able to fit this Kidison Black and 2 of these cards, and then also possibly go for Unrestrained or for Left-Handed, or utilize one of these other utility cards that are in the game that I'm not even talking about? As we go and release more cards, this problem gets much, much greater because there's just more golds that you want when you are talking about saturating your decks with cards that actually give you skills, and that's what Tokai Teio solves as a problem. Now you don't have to run Kidison Black, which the second thing is Kidison Black's speed generation in particular is much less than a lot of these cards, which the reason why we buy it is for its consistency. For the high roll decks that don't really care about that, you may be better off running Summer Maru, who has higher speed trainings, or you're maybe running, like I said, Silent Suzuka. And this problem, like I said, it solves that problem. You can now get Professor of Curvature on a character without having to run one of your speed slots. So it is a stake too juicy situation, but it's a situation that is fast approaching. And basically, based on this mile tracks and future mile tracks, you're going to want to be running the Taiki Shuttle speed card if you're a high spender. And of course, as time goes on, we will get many, many more skills. I think that's it. Yeah, so now you can go and fill out your deck with this instead. For its longevity, just think of it this way too. When we get Alcondra Process Speed, first of all, we're going to be on 2 wit or 1 wit with Measure Romano. That's when it's like not required to have, but technically Alcondra Process Speed gives Professor of Curvature, but it also does give an acceleration on certain tracks, particularly I believe longer tracks, like mediums and longs, for Pace Chasers and late surges, and this card still remains relevant because you can take the pro curve and then just choose that acceleration on your Alcondra Pasta Speed. When does it actually die? Well, when we really start needing SP bonus on cards, which should be after Grandmasters. when we can't take too many cards with SP bonus 0, and this card just being a generally good wit card kind of just doesn't make the cut when there are future cards that just have 2 SP bonus. And that is when Tokai Teio sort of goes and just becomes another speed card. Or another speed card, another wit card, and where it kind of gets relegated to where Citizen Black's going to be after we have what's it called? Elcon or Hasa Speed. Think of it this way, like Elcon or Hasa Speed is going to be released. We have Agnes Tachyon Speed, who has SP bonus, which is your secondary speed card. How are you going to be able to fit a third card with Citizen Black? The same thing is going to happen to Wit when we have Measure Romanu and another Wit card that has SP bonus plus 2. How are we going to be able to fit this card in 3 Wit, especially when Wit is the only stat that doesn't really scale too much past the additional caps that the game actually goes and imposes. So, my personal suggestion, hopefully I've given you the information required. This has been a little yappy and unstructured because, again, I have about 5 minutes before I got to get out that door. So, if you have the carrots and somehow have not burned absolutely everything on the scenario banner, the scenario banner is more important for 95% of players. I guess if you don't want to participate in Grand Live, you will be losing half the longevity of this card too. But who should really be pulling on this one? Well, if you have the carrots for it still, which would be 2 sparks to get this MLB, you have to be either a high spender who have mini speed options that you need to start relieving speed slots from Citizen Black. Otherwise, new players who have missed Citizen Black, this is an opportunity to get Professor of Curvature if you don't have a good first or second wit card. I don't know if there's any new players that will have the carrots for it, but it is a perfectly fine option if you're able to get it MLB. But you also may just want to run the double banner for Fine Motion and Summer Mario coming up here in a bit. Otherwise, Citizen Black Oshis, you now have access to Professor of Curvature, and you're taking the lead character, so you don't have to run the Bourbon Wit, so it kind of slots in rather nicely. And brand new players in those 3 to 4 days in which the scenario banner is gone, this is a perfectly fine reroll target. So that's all. Thank you for bearing with me on this one. Again, this video kind of got pushed back a tiny bit because, I had to make the ticket video, let's be honest. So I got to get over to work. I hope that this has gone and at least this discussion has helped you out a little bit in both making a decision here, but even if you're not really looking at the card, this is a problem that you should be prepared for. And when you're analyzing future cards in your pull plans, make sure that the skills that you're getting kind of work towards the roles that you particularly enjoy. Since we are stopping building just stat sticks, eventually you will have 6 cards and you will not need a stat stick anymore. You want stat sticks that also give you stuff to help the characters that you particularly enjoy. For those in Teio, Cord, and Lucas, that character, of course, is Tokai Teio. So take care, everyone. Burbout.